Okay, hello, welcome back to another episode of the NCAA tournament previews. Today we jump to the Denver versus Michigan game, a really fun game here, potential to be real low scoring. Denver has the second best scoring defense in the country, and it's a fucking big, bad unit. They're tall, and they are aggressive. They're athletic, led by Mercurio and Casey Wilson in the rope unit and a bunch of other good players. Obviously, it's a story of momentum. Denver coming off a loss, obviously a disappointing way to end their season against Villanova. For what it's worth, Villanova gave Georgetown a really good run as well. So that was a very good Nova team. Other than that, Denver's best wins of the year probably came early. First game against Hopkins, fourth game against Cornell. Were definitely their best wins. Had a pretty good effort against Duke. That ended up losing 11-7, and then a tight win over Georgetown a few weeks ago, which is kind of sealed the deal for their regular season conference championship there. But then some other low-scoring games, and like I said, this defense is nasty. They've held opponents under 10 goals 7 times. They held Marquette to 9, Providence to 4, Georgetown to 8, St. John's to 8, Villanova to 6. Duke scored 11, but they had only 7 or 8 with a few minutes left. That game kind of opened up in the last few minutes. Ohio State, they held to 6. Some of the best offenses in the country, Yale and Cornell, had a bit of success on them, 15 and 16, but then 6 to Lemoyne, 8 to Utah, 9 to Air Force. Like I've been saying, this is a big, bad group defensively. And then on the flip side, Michigan's the hottest team in the country, second year in a row that they won second year in a row that they won their conference tournament when they needed to. And it's a big, tough, really good conference. They beat a very good Johns Hopkins team and then a very good Penn State team, and they humbled them a little bit. They smoked Penn State in that game, 16-4, 10-7 against Hopkins, and Hopkins had 6 goals within the first basically 16 minutes of the game. First quarter, I think they had 5, then scored another one early in the second. They pitched a shutout for a long time in that game, and they really showed some of their own chops defensively. The biggest matchup in this game, I've been saying it a lot, but maybe the 2 best face-off guys in the whole country. Wheatfield, just USA Lacrosse magazine came out today. Wheatfield from Michigan is the first team All-American. Stathakis from Denver is the second team. Both these teams rely on that face-off advantage to really fuel them. And, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, if one guy gets smoked, that's going to significantly affect the game. Usually when these top guys go after each other, it's fairly even. Another thing that's similar between these two teams is some of the best short sticks you're going to see in the country. Casey Wilson is a stud. He's from Victoria, out there for Denver. And then Bo Pettersson, I think, is one of the 2 or 3 best in the whole country. Both those guys were on All-American teams. Mercurio for Denver, the long stick midfielder, he was on an All-American team. So a lot of very good players in the rope units for these teams. And then, again, Michigan's been hot recently. They have a number of higher scorers than Denver does. Cohen's the highest scorer in the game coming in with 65 points. Boehm, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, it's at 63. And then Justin Tiernan with a fun season, 53 goals, 3 assists. He's out there to finish. Obviously, with this being in the first round, it's a lot of travel for Michigan. I guess they probably would have had to travel anywhere up the East Coast, but obviously a tough travel going into Denver, and Denver just never seems to lose much at home. So obviously a tough task. Michigan was probably hoping for a better seed in this tournament, but catching a team coming off a loss when they're coming off 4 straight wins and some pretty dramatic ones and some much-needed ones, starting with a rivalry win over Ohio State. Michigan will be looking to carry that momentum, and when you watch them play in the Big Ten tournament, they're fired up and they're playing with that momentum. Okay, we'll start with the keys for Denver. Going to put some film clips in here. The most important thing for Denver is beating short sticks. Pettersson, number 89, is as good as it gets, I think, in the country, as reflected by his early second round, I believe, selection in the PLL. And then number 6 for Michigan is really solid as well. That's Grant McMurray. They're kind of the top 2. Their other ones are good, but beating those guys is going to be important. That's not really a huge strength, I would say, of Denver, a team that is fairly small up front and relies on quickness and kind of ball movement. I would be shocked if Michigan comes out looking to slide a lot. They're going to hold their matchups and try to play the ball well. The ability for Michigan to score in those situations is going to be big, especially in invert situations. That's how they got their goals against Duke. Pedersen especially is a load in the invert. He's just a big boy. So the extent to which you can keep his hands off you, the better you are for Denver. On that note, Michigan played a lot of what is commonly referred to as safety, which is a pick and roll coverage where in big little actions behind the net, the short stick covering the picker will just stand above the net. This is particularly effective for Michigan because their short sticks are good and strong. They have the ability to kind of make some tough approaches there in the low angle. But one of the storylines of the game is going to be the ability for Denver to get Lampert. They're arguably their best player. Number 2, he's super fast, and he likes to get long runs behind the goal. So where some guys like to really try to dice you up, Lampert really likes to get ahead of steam and get going, and the ability to set good picks and to put pressure on that safety is going to be important because it messes up your flow above the net, and if you miss the pick, or rather if the picker doesn't get a piece of the defender, it's a really effective strategy because you're basically just leaving that offensive player, the picker, in kind of no man's land. And again, if you throw back to those players, Michigan's got guys who can cover it. So that's going to be something to watch. Lampert's going to have to be good in this game. It hasn't been super smooth sailing recently for Denver on the offensive side of the ball. He's a guy who can win matchups and get to the goal. That's going to be at a premium against a good Michigan defense. On that note, Denver's going to be looking to get out in transition. That's going to be a major storyline in this game. Mercurio's got 6 goals on the year. That's a lot for a defender in college. Again, what I mean by that is the PLL with the shortened field and the shortened shot clock, and the 2-point line is sometimes more conducive to goal scoring, as well as just the increased risk tolerance by most coaches. In college, it's harder to score by defenders. You have to get up the field earlier. The sub box is wider, and you don't always have the green light. So to have 6 goals by an LSM is a lot. That's why he's one of the best in the country, and that's why he landed on an All-American team. So Denver's going to be looking to score easy goals. Their ability to do that, and the ability for Michigan to have great defensive transition is going to be a major storyline. And then switching sides of the field to the defense for Denver, this is a group for Michigan that's probably playing better than their numbers suggest on the year. They've had some tough outings, games of 7 and 8 just before their winning streak commenced, but they scored 16 on a pretty good Penn State team. 10 on Hopkins, who's pretty stout defensively, 13 over Ohio State, which is one of the best teams or best defenses in the country, and then 15 on Rutgers, which is always tough. So they're playing very well, and it's a group that knows their identity. I think the key for Denver is try not to be reckless. Denver uses their size really well, and they do slide a bit, but they slide to create havoc and they slide to create turnovers, and they can get to hands very quickly because of their length. Michigan plays really good offense. They're very well coached, and in particular, they have a lot of skip feeders. Cohen is the headliner here. He had 7 assists, I think, in the Big Ten tournament, or in the Big Ten championship game, rather, and he's got the ability to really whip it through the defense. You don't want to get packed in so tight that he can rip it through, and they got shooters on the backside. With that, Michael Boehm for Michigan does a great job of finding short sticks. Denver's going to have a plan for supporting those matchups. He can score. I'll throw in some clips in these plays. He does a great job of finding short sticks and getting himself covered up. I've been talking about that throughout this week. Guys like TJ Malone from Penn State, they set picks to get their short sticks. Other guys run off picks to get their short sticks. Bohm does a good job of finding them through off-ball cuts and through capitalizing on slides to other players. This is a Michigan team that has some guys who can win matchups on both of their midfield lines. I'll get into that more with the Michigan keys. They're going to force you to slide a little bit more than some other teams at this time of year, and Denver's willing to slide. It's going to be something to watch all game. And then you got to find Tiernan inside. I said it, 53 goals, 3 assists. He's not Canadian, but that's a damn Canadian stat line, and I'll throw in a clip in here. Like all of these great finishers in the country, this team doesn't need much to throw it in. They are going to throw him the ball if he's even partially open, and he's very, very good at catching and finishing. You got to have eyes on him at all times. For if you're Denver, he doesn't have to be open for them to throw it, and I think that's going to be important. And then the last key for Denver, something that I picked up watching the film, Michigan will jump into a zone off of failed clears, turnovers, quick defensive transition where they push it doesn't go, and the ball comes back. Basically, on any sort of second possession, Michigan will jump into zone, so they will need to be ready to play zone offense, and it can be sometimes when the offense itself is tired, which is why it's an effective strategy by the Wolverines. And then for Michigan, I was really impressed in the Big Ten tournament with the play of Christian Ronda. The kid's pretty nasty. He's very two-handed. He stays with his chest to the goal more than he rolls, which I think is really impressive. Reminds me of my PLL teammate Matt Campbell, also a little bit of Connor Kelly. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys. Those guys are incredible players, but he kind of dodges like them, and he's clearly comfortable going both ways. I think he's a guy who's better than his numbers suggest, especially the shooting numbers, shooting just 23% on the year. I thought he was awesome against Penn State especially. He's the party starter for them offensively. If he can get it going in the high wing right out of the box, they're going to have success. There's a number of times where he was able to turn his defenders where they ended up having their back to him. He's pretty shifty and deceptive that way. Obviously, Mercurio, the All-American for Denver, that's going to be a fun battle. If Denver can win those, they'll have a much better shot of getting through the rest of the possession. And then Justin Brown on the second line can do a lot of the same things, has also struggled with shooting this year. It's just 17%, but he scored a goal in that Penn State game, and he can get after you in the high wing as well. I think the ability for Denver to hold up, especially their poles, is going to be important. Casey Wilson is an All-American. Denver's got good short sticks. Sometimes it can be, if your poles can hold up, you might be okay. And then defensively, how slow can they go? Denver has at times struggled to win matchups. I would expect Michigan, like I already said, to be really slow. I think if you're Michigan, you really want to test out how well you can play defensively. And then Hunter Taylor's got to stay hot. I was actually lucky to coach him before his college career in high school. I had a great experience coaching him, just 50.6% on the season. But like the rest of their team, you basically have to throw out all these statistics for the whole season for Michigan because it's basically a new team in the playoffs, and Taylor's been really solid and has been good in the clear and just been outstanding throughout the Big Ten tournament. You got to play 6-on-6 defense. You don't want to let this team get up and down in transition against Denver. Don't give them any free goals. Don't give them any more than they're already going to have. And then they just have to keep playing their offense. I think they're really well coached. They run some fun stuff, which I'll include in here. They do a great job of getting Cohen and Bohm onto short sticks. This is a really well-schemed play by the Michigan offense. Bohm is going to come in here, come off a mumbo. They don't end up scoring off it, but it gets their best player onto a short stick, and he can really go to work and score unassisted goals in these situations. Bo Lockwood is a guy who started a lot of games for them, is now coming on the second line. He's got 8 goals and 28 assists this year as a second-line midi. Now, I think he was starting and playing some attack early in the year, so that kind of helped to juice some of those numbers, or maybe playing midfield, but still he was starting, playing a little bit more. But to have an invert threat and a feeder like that on your second line, along with a guy like Brown who can really get it going up top, they're a little bit deeper than I think people probably realize, and their middies are solid. Mulholland scored some big goals. Isaac Aronson scored some big goals. And if you look at their scores, there's some depth there. And that's, by the way, a strength of Denver too. All 9 of Denver's top 2 lines and attack have scored significant amount of points this year. So they're two very deep teams offensively, and two teams that'll work it late in the clock and play good offense. But if you're Michigan, you got to keep going. The most important thing for Michigan, keep the good times flowing. Again, a team coming off a loss in Denver. Michigan's the hottest team in the country. It's going to be an important early stage of this game to just kind of keep the momentum going for Michigan. But they've showed the ability to rebound. They were down big early right away to Hopkins in the semifinal game, and they came back pretty swiftly and didn't show any panic there. So it'll be more of the same for Michigan. Kind of have alluded to it throughout the video here, but X factors for the game. Ronda is it for me for Michigan, number 19 midfielder. He's going to have to shoot well. He's going to have to score, and then the guy who's likely going to be guarding him, AJ Mercurio, his ability to both guard the ball and to give them juice in transition is going to be important. It's going to be an interesting game because the best player, arguably, on either team is both their face-off guys. So presumably they split or do something close to it. They'll both neutralize the biggest strength of the other team while simultaneously mitigating their own strength. Obviously, if one of those guys gets really hot, it's going to be a big story. But it should be a really fun battle in there. It's going to be a physical game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a 9-8 game, a 7-6 game. Maybe not 7-6, but this could be low scoring. A couple really good coaches in this game, really good staffs, and should be a fun one to watch.